Imagine waking up in a world where your closest neighbor is 100 miles away and your morning commute is a mountain ridge trail. That was reality for the mountain men of the 1830s, those legendary trappers who could read the wilderness like we read text messages. Their forgotten skills kept them alive in America's most unforgiving landscapes, and honestly, what they pulled off was nothing short of miraculous. Before we start, if these stories help you sleep, hit like or subscribe. Where are you listening from tonight? Comment your location and time. I always check comments, and it's wild seeing folks from Tokyo to Toronto drifting off to the same story. Alright, tonight we're going back to the rugged world of the mountain men. But before we go anywhere, get comfortable. Like, properly comfortable. Adjust your pillows, pull that blanket up. Where we're going, you'll want to be settled in safe and warm. Your eyes open to a freezing Montana morning, 1834. The first thing that hits you isn't the cold, though that's brutal enough. It's the silence. Modern life is never this quiet. There's a stillness that makes your breath seem thunderous. The frost inside your shelter sparkles in dawn's first light, filtering through the smoke hole above. Each exhale creates a small cloud that hangs in the air before dissipating. You're lying on a bed of pine boughs covered with a buffalo robe, your rifle within arm's reach. Your back aches from the uneven ground beneath you. Unlike your memory foam mattress with its perfect support, this wilderness bed offers only the barest separation between you and the frozen earth. "Rise and shine, greenhorn," a gruff voice calls from outside. "Beaver ain't gonna trap themselves." That's Moses Harris, Black Harris to most, 40-something years old with a beard like steel wool and hands as gnarled as oak roots. A legend among trappers. Stories say he once killed 3 Blackfoot warriors with just his skinning knife after they ambushed him. You've been lucky enough to fall under his wing this season, your first in the mountains. "Coming," you mumble, your throat dry from the smoky air inside your brush shelter. You roll onto your side, every muscle protesting. Your shelter isn't much, just a simple lean-to made of branches and pine boughs, but compared to sleeping under the open sky, it's a palace. It took you less than an hour to build using skills Harris taught you. The mountain men could throw up basic shelters in minutes, a critical skill when the weather turned deadly without warning. Your clothes from yesterday are frozen stiff where you hung them to dry. Lovely. You pull them on anyway, the fabric cracking as it bends. They'll thaw and soften with your body heat soon enough. Modern outdoor gear with its Gore-Tex and synthetic insulation would be a miracle here, but you make do with what you have. Buckskin pants, a wool shirt, and a fur-lined capote coat. Outside, the world is painted in silver and blue. The thermometer doesn't exist yet, but you'd guess it's maybe 15 degrees below zero. Your breath streams away like dragon smoke. Harris already has a small fire going, melting snow in a blackened coffee pot. "Thought you might sleep till spring," he says, not looking up from the fire. "Coffee will be ready soon. Best drink in creation, especially when it's cold enough to freeze the balls off a brass monkey." You grunt in response, still not fully awake. The smell of the coffee is heavenly though, rich and bitter and promising warmth. Most mountain men considered coffee a necessity, not a luxury. Some would go without food before they'd go without coffee. It provided not just warmth and energy, but a psychological comfort that was hard to find out here. "Got 6 traps to check before we set new ones," Harris says, pouring the steaming coffee into a tin cup and handing it to you. "River's running high from yesterday's melt. Gotta be careful." You nod, wrapping your hands around the hot metal. The warmth seeps into your frozen fingers. Almost painful, but welcome. You lift the cup to your lips and take a cautious sip. It's strong enough to stand a spoon in. Mountain coffee, not the delicate brew you'd get at some city cafe. It's perfect. "Eat," Harris says, tossing you a strip of jerky. "Need your strength." The jerky is tough as old leather, requiring serious jaw strength to tear off a piece. It's elk meat dried months ago and hard as wood. You tuck it into your cheek to soften while you sip more coffee. This is breakfast on the frontier. No pancakes, no eggs, just meat and coffee. Sometimes pemmican if you're lucky, that dense mixture of dried meat, fat and berries that could keep a man alive through the harshest conditions. Saw wolf tracks yesterday, about a quarter-mile downstream, Harris mentions casually, as if discussing the weather. Big pack, 10, maybe 12, your stomach tightens. Wolves weren't usually a threat to armed men, but a hungry winter pack was unpredictable. Harris reads your expression and snorts. Don't worry so much, boy. Wolves got better sense than to tangle with us. They're after the same thing we are. Food. Speaking of which, he kicks dirt over the fire, extinguishing it with practiced efficiency. Daylight's wasting. The morning air scours your lungs as you follow Harris through the snow. Each step crunches loudly, breaking the pristine silence. Your rifle, a Hawken, the mountain man's weapon of choice, feels reassuringly solid in your hands. The Hawken wasn't just a gun, it was a lifeline. Unlike the Kentucky long rifles most settlers carried, the Hawken was shorter, more durable, and packed a bigger punch, perfect for the mountainous terrain and large game of the Rockies. First rule of trapping, Harris says over his shoulder. Know your beaver. Know where they dam, where they feed, where they enter the water. You've heard this lecture before, but you listen anyway. In the mountains, repetition was how knowledge got hammered into your brain, and that knowledge kept you alive. Beaver's a creature of habit, he continues. They use the same runs, same paths, to and from the water. That's where you set your trap. The river comes into view, a dark ribbon cutting through the white landscape. Parts of it are frozen, but the center flows black and fast. Harris points to a section of bank where a small creek empties into the main river. See there? That fallen birch? Beaver been chewing on it fresh too. Look at the color of the wood. You follow his gaze and notice the pale yellow of freshly exposed wood where the bark has been gnawed away. Impressive that he spotted it from this distance. Okay, first trap, Harris announces as you reach a narrow point in the river. He kneels and brushes away snow, revealing a chain disappearing into the water. With practiced movements, he pulls the chain, drawing up a metal contraption from beneath the surface. A new house, Nufka 4 beaver trap, the industry standard, and in its jaws, a large beaver, drowned and ready for skinning. Got one. You can't help but feel excited. Each beaver means money, and money means supplies, ammunition, and eventually, if you're lucky, enough to buy land somewhere. Good placement, Harris nods approvingly. He takes out his skinning knife, a tool as important to a trapper as his rifle. Watch close now. Gotta do this right or you'll ruin the pelt. With swift, precise movements, Harris begins to skin the beaver. His knife slides between fur and flesh, separating the valuable pelt from the carcass with minimal damage. It's gruesome, but fascinating. The methodical way he works, never wasting a motion. Trick is to keep the knife edge up away from the hide, he explains. Nick the pelt and you lose value. Trading post ain't gonna pay full price for damaged goods. The wet, meaty smell fills your nostrils as Harris works. It's not pleasant, but it's a smell you've grown accustomed to. This is your life now. Blood and fur and survival. You'll do the next one, he says, finishing up and rolling the pelt fur side in. He tucks it into his possibles bag, the leather satchel where trappers kept essential items. Meat's good eating too, we'll take some back to camp. You move on to the next trap location, navigating the treacherous riverbank. One wrong step could mean a plunge into freezing water, a potential death sentence out here. Hypothermia could kill faster than any predator, especially when help might be days or weeks away. Hold up! Harris suddenly freezes, his hand raised in warning. You stop instantly, scanning the area for danger. Grizzly, he whispers, pointing to a set of massive tracks in the snow. Big male from the size, passed through maybe an hour ago. Your heart hammers against your ribs. Grizzlies were the undisputed kings of the Rockies, capable of killing a man with a single swipe. Even experienced mountain men feared them. What do we do? You whisper back. We stay alert, Harris says simply, and we make noise. Grizzly don't want to meet us any more than we want to meet him. Most bears that kill men do it because they got surprised. He begins to talk louder as you continue, occasionally shouting or singing snatches of bawdy songs. You join in, feeling slightly foolish, but not foolish enough to question his wisdom. At the second trap site, you find another beaver. As promised, Harris watches as you attempt to skin it. Your first cuts are hesitant, unsure. Commit to the cut, Harris advises. Timid knife makes a mess. Be bold but careful. You adjust your grip and try again, focusing on keeping the blade away from the fur. It's harder than Harris made it look, but you manage to remove most of the pelt intact. Harris inspects your work with a critical eye. Not bad for a greenhorn, he concedes. You'll get better, or you'll starve. Mountain has a way of teaching quick lessons. The next 2 traps are empty, and the 5th has been sprung without catching anything. Harris resets them with expert efficiency, showing you how to position the trap on a beaver run and secure it properly. Trap's gotta be underwater, he explains, deep enough that the beaver drowns quick, otherwise the poor bastard might chew his own leg off to escape. Seen it happen. Beaver with 3 legs are wily as the devil himself. For bait, Harris pulls out a small wooden container from his possibles bag. Inside is a dark, pungent substance, castoreum, the oil from a beaver's scent gland mixed with various ingredients. Smells like hell, but beavers can't resist it, he grins, dabbing a small amount on a stick positioned above the reset trap. Think of it like putting up a no trespassing sign in beaver language. They come to investigate, and he makes a snapping motion with his hands. The last trap yields another beaver. A small one, but still valuable. You help Harris reset it, trying to mimic his precise movements. The metal is ice cold, numbing your fingers despite your leather gloves. How these men worked through winter with primitive gear seems almost superhuman now. That's all for checking, Harris announces. Now we set new ones upstream. You follow him as he scouts new locations, studying the banks for signs of beaver activity, gnawed trees, slides where beavers enter the water, and the remains of dams. It's detective work, reading the subtle signs most people would miss entirely. There, Harris points to a narrow channel between 2 small islands. Perfect spot. Beavers got to swim through there to reach that stand of aspens they've been feeding on. He wades into the frigid water, seemingly unbothered by the cold that would send most men into shock. Mountain men developed an almost supernatural tolerance for discomfort, or perhaps they just accepted it as the cost of freedom. Trick is to disguise the human scent, Harris explains, dipping the trap in mud before setting it. Beavers got a nose that had put a bloodhound to shame. You help place 3 more traps in strategic locations, your hands numb and clumsy from the cold. By the time you finish, the sun has climbed higher, warming the air slightly, but doing little to thaw your frozen extremities. Should head back, Harris decides, studying the sky. Weather's turning. You look up and notice dark clouds gathering over the western peaks. In the mountains, weather changed with terrifying speed. A clear morning could become a deadly blizzard by afternoon. How can you tell, you ask, seeing nothing obviously threatening in the clouds? Harris taps his nose. Smell it? Air's got that metallic taste. Snow's coming. Big storm too. Best be back at camp when it hits. You strain your senses, but detect nothing unusual. Still, you've learned to trust Harris's instincts. The mountain men developed a sixth sense for weather patterns. They had to. Being caught unprepared could be fatal. The trek back to camp is more difficult, laden down with beaver pelts and meat. The temperature drops noticeably as clouds roll in, blocking the sun. Your earlier tracks are already partially filled with fresh snow. Pace yourself, Harris advises when he notices you breathing hard. Sweat's your enemy in cold. Get wet, get dead. It's a common saying among mountain men. In sub-zero temperatures, sweat-soaked clothing could freeze, rapidly lowering body temperature. Many an inexperienced trapper had died not from starvation or animal attacks, but from the simple mistake of overexertion, followed by rest in frigid conditions. When we get back, Harris says, I'll show you how to stretch and prepare those pelts. Gotta do it right, or they'll rot. This was the unglamorous side of trapping, the meticulous preparation of furs that took hours of careful work. Each pelt had to be stretched on a willow hoop or board, scraped clean of fat and flesh, and properly dried. Any mistake in the process could ruin the fur's value. How many you reckon you need to make it through winter? Harris asks. You consider the question. Each beaver pelt fetched roughly $3 at the trading posts, a significant sum in the 1830s, but supplies were expensive in the mountains, where everything had to be hauled in by mule train. 100 maybe, you venture, Harris snorts. Try 200, minimum. And that's if you're frugal. Winter's long up here, longer than you can imagine. The implication is clear. You need to work faster, trap more efficiently. Your survival depends on it. No welfare, no safety net, just your skills and determination standing between you and starvation. Camp comes into view just as the first snowflakes begin to fall. You've been out since dawn, and your body aches with fatigue. But there's no rest yet. The pelts need attention, firewood needs gathering, and food needs preparing. The work of survival never ends. Good morning's work, Harris says, as you drop your load of pelts near the fire pit. Your learning might make a mountain man of you yet. From him, this qualifies as high praise. You feel a surge of pride despite your exhaustion. You're adapting, surviving in a world that kills the weak and unprepared. Your hands may be bloody, your muscles may scream in protest, but you're alive. In the mountains, that's victory enough. Now, Harris says, pulling out his skinning knife again, let me show you how to turn these green hides into something a man can sell. The snow falls harder as he begins the demonstration, but inside your crude shelter, with fire warming your face and hard-earned pelts at your feet, you feel something unexpected, contentment. This life is brutal and unforgiving, but there's a raw honesty to it that you've never found in civilization. As Harris works, he begins to tell you stories of his years in the mountains, tales of narrow escapes, of great rendezvous where hundreds of trappers gathered to trade and celebrate, of winters so harsh they had to eat their moccasins to survive. 1824, winter came early, he recalls, his knife never stopping its methodical scraping. Got caught up near the Yellowstone with nothing but my rifle and the clothes on my back, snow up to my armpits, no shelter, no food, thought I was done for. You lean in, captivated despite your fatigue. These stories were the oral history of the mountains, passed from veteran to greenhorn, carrying the hard-won wisdom that kept men alive. What happened, you prompt when he falls silent. Harris grins, revealing a gap where two teeth should be. Found a bear den. Bear was hibernating, fat as a priest after Easter. Well, one of us wasn't going to see spring. He shrugs. I'm still here. You can't help but laugh at his matter-of-fact delivery. This is mountain man humor, dark, understated, and laced with the constant awareness of mortality. The snowfall thickens outside, creating a white curtain around your small camp. But you're prepared. Shelter secure, fire burning, food available. Harris has taught you well these past months. Tomorrow will bring more traps to check, more beaver to skin, more challenges to overcome. But tonight, as the wilderness disappears under a blanket of white, you've earned your place in this harsh, beautiful world. Your hands may be stained with blood and your body weary beyond words, but you're becoming something new, a man of the mountains, tested by nature and found worthy. The soft hiss of snow falling on the fire creates a gentle rhythm as Harris continues his story. Unlike your modern bedroom with its artificial silence, this wilderness night is alive with subtle sounds. The crackle of flames, the whisper of wind, the occasional crack of a branch surrendering to the weight of snow. You feel your eyelids growing heavy, but you fight to stay awake, to absorb every scrap of knowledge Harris offers. In this world, such knowledge isn't academic. It's survival. Every skill learned, every story heard might someday be the difference between life and death. As night fully claims the sky, turning the snowfall into a dance of shadows and firelight, you realize that for all its dangers and discomforts, there's a profound peace to this life. No deadlines, no traffic, no endless notifications demanding attention. Just the immediate needs of existence and the vast, indifferent beauty of the mountains. Harris falls silent, his story complete, his work on the pelts finished for now. He pours another cup of coffee, adding a splash of something stronger from a small flask, his precious supply of whiskey, saved for special occasions or particularly cold nights. "Get some rest," he advises, noticing your struggle to stay awake. "Tomorrow's another day. Beaver ain't going nowhere." As you settle into your bedroll, muscles aching and mind full of new knowledge, you understand why men chose this life despite its hardships. There's a clarity here, a purpose uncluttered by the complexities of civilization. Each day presents simple questions with profound consequences. Will you eat? Will you stay warm? Will you survive until tomorrow? Outside, the storm intensifies, but inside your shelter, wrapped in buffalo hide and warmed by the dying fire, you feel an unexpected security. The modern world, with its countless comforts, seems impossibly distant, like a half-remembered dream. This is reality now, immediate, demanding, and somehow more authentic than anything you've known before. Sleep comes swiftly, carrying you away from aching muscles and bloody hands to dreams of beaver streams and mountain valleys yet unexplored. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, but tonight you rest like the mountain men of old, deeply, completely, with the simple satisfaction of having survived another day in the unforgiving embrace of the wild. Morning comes with the smell of smoke and coffee. The storm passed sometime in the night, leaving behind a world transformed by snow. Everything gleams bright enough to hurt your eyes. You roll over in your bedroll, every muscle screaming in protest. "Up and at 'em, Greenhorn." Harris kicks the bottom of your buffalo robe. "Got company coming." You bolt upright, hand instinctively reaching for your rifle. "Blackfoot?" Harris snorts. "Nah. Crow. Friendly enough, long as you don't get handsy with their women or horses." He tosses you a strip of jerky. "Eat up. Trading's hungry work." You force yourself to chew the leathery meat while pulling on your still damp moccasins. The previous day's trapping has left your hands raw and blistered, but there's no time to coddle yourself. In the mountains, pain was just another daily companion, like hunger and cold. How do you know they're coming? You ask, seeing no signs of visitors. Harris taps his ear. Listen. You strain to hear past the crackling fire and the soft hiss of melting snow dripping from tree branches. Then you catch it, the distant jingle of metal, bells or tin cones sewn onto clothing, a common decoration among many tribes. They'll be here soon, Harris says, adding more wood to the fire. Best look busy. Crow respect men who work. You set about stretching the beaver pelts from yesterday onto willow hoops, a task that requires both strength and delicacy. The skin must be stretched tight enough to dry properly, but not so tight it tears. Your fingers, stiff from cold, struggle with the intricate work. So what do we trade? You ask, fighting with a particularly stubborn piece of hide. Whatever they want that we can spare, Harris replies, checking his own supply of trade goods, beads, awls, small mirrors, and a few precious steel knives. Might be they want coffee or tobacco, might be they just want news. He pauses, fixing you with a serious stare. Listen close, 'cause this might save your life someday. When Indians come to trade, it ain't just about swapping goods. It's about respect, building a bond. You rush it, treat 'em like they're just walking trading posts. You'll end up with your hair hanging from somebody's lodgepole. You nod, absorbing the lesson. Mountain men who survived long-term had to be diplomats as well as trappers. The wilderness was native territory, and a man alone couldn't afford to make enemies. First thing is the gift, Harris continues. You always offer something before trading starts. Something good, not just leftovers. Shows goodwill. What if I don't have anything to spare, you ask. Harris chuckles darkly. Then you better hope they like your jokes, 'cause your scalp ain't worth much. Before you can respond, the sound of approaching horses becomes unmistakable. Harris straightens up, adjusting his possibles bag and checking that his knife and pistol are accessible but not prominently displayed. A subtle gesture tells you to do the same. Let me do the talking, he mutters. At least at first. The crow arrive like a painting come to life. 8 riders on painted ponies, their hair adorned with feathers, their clothing a riot of colours and intricate beadwork. Unlike the fringed buckskins depicted in dime novels, these men wear a practical mix of traditional dress and traded goods. Several sport wool blankets draped over shoulders, and one has a US Army coat modified with quillwork and beads. Their leader, distinguished by an impressive headdress of eagle feathers, raises his hand in greeting. "How, Black Harris," he calls in heavily accented English. "How, 2 moons," Harris responds, using the universal Plains greeting. He raises his hand, palm forward in the gesture of peace. "Been a long winter." 2 moons dismounts with fluid grace, his face weathered but his eyes sharp and intelligent. The other warriors remain on horseback, watching you with undisguised curiosity. New face. 2 moons nods toward you. "Your son," Harris laughs. "Nah, just teaching him how not to die. Names." He turns to you expectantly. "William," you supply. Then, remembering mountain man custom, add Will Green. 2 moons studies you for a moment, then nods. Good name. Easy to say. Among trappers and tribes alike, a simple name that could be pronounced by many tongues was an advantage. Harris reaches into his bag and pulls out a small pouch of tobacco, his prized Virginia blend, carefully rationed through the winter. "For you, old friend," he says, offering it to 2 moons with both hands. "Best smoke this side of St. Louis." The crow leader accepts the gift with appropriate ceremony, sniffing the tobacco appreciatively. "Good medicine," he pronounces. Then, from within his own robe, he produces a small parfleche, a rawhide container, decorated with geometric designs. "For you, buffalo tongue my wife made." Harris accepts the gift with evident pleasure. Preserved buffalo tongue was considered a delicacy, rich and flavorful compared to the monotonous diet of jerky and whatever game could be hunted. "Your woman makes the best," Harris says, tucking the parfleche away carefully. "Please thank her for me." The formal exchange of gifts complete, the atmosphere relaxes perceptibly. Two Moons gestures, and his men dismount, coming to warm themselves by your fire. One young warrior continues to stare at you with particular intensity. "That's walks far," Harris murmurs to you. "First war party last fall. Took 2 Blackfoot scalps. He's looking to add to his count, so don't stare back too hard." You swallow nervously and busy yourself with the pelts. Despite Harris's assurances that the Crow were allies, the tension is palpable. These men were formidable warriors in their own right, capable of killing with terrifying efficiency if provoked. Two Moons speaks rapidly in Crow to his men, who produce various items for trade: beautifully tanned hides, moccasins sewn with colourful quill work, and several bags of pemmican. The real trading is about to begin. "Watch and learn," Harris advises. "Trading's got its own language." What follows is a masterclass in frontier diplomacy. Harris never shows too much interest in any item, no matter how valuable. He examines each offering casually, making non-committal noises. Two Moons does the same with Harris's trade goods. Both men know exactly what they want, but the protocol must be observed. "This knife," Two Moons finally says, picking up one of Harris's steel blades. "Good metal?" "Best Sheffield steel," Harris confirms. "Hold an edge better than any other." The Crow leader tests the blade with his thumb, nodding appreciatively. "What you want for this?" Harris shrugs. "That buffalo robe looks warm." Two Moons laughs. "This robe worth 3 knives. Very fine work, my youngest wife." And so the haggling begins in earnest. Back and forth they go, each man praising his own goods while finding fault with the others. It's a dance, a ritual, as important as the actual exchange of items. You watch, fascinated, as Harris trades 3 steel needles for a pair of beautifully beaded moccasins, then a small mirror for a substantial bag of pemmican. Each transaction is punctuated by stories, jokes, and subtle compliments. Never is the trading rushed. Each item receives its due consideration. "Your turn," Harris suddenly says, nudging you forward. Two Moons wants to see what you've got. Panic flutters in your chest. You haven't prepared for this. Frantically, you search your meager possessions for something worth trading. Your fingers close around your spare knife. Not your best, but decent quality. "I have this," you offer, holding it out to Two Moons. The Crow leader takes it, examining the blade carefully. His face gives nothing away. "Good knife," he finally pronounces. "What you want for it?" You scan the items the Crow have brought. There's a beautiful quilled belt that catches your eye, but you sense it's worth far more than your knife. Instead, you point to a smaller item, a leather pouch filled with what looks like dried berries. "What are those?" you ask. "Choke cherries," Two Moons replies. "Good medicine for winter sickness. Make tea." You nod, trying to appear knowledgeable. "I would trade my knife for that." Two Moons considers, then nods. "Fair trade. You know how to use?" When you hesitate, he explains. "Boil in water. Drink when sick. Good for cough. Good for belly." You accept the pouch, feeling oddly proud of completing your first trade. Harris gives you an approving nod when Two Moons isn't looking. The trading continues for another hour, a leisurely process interspersed with conversation and the sharing of news. You learn that a party of American Fur Company men was attacked by Blackfoot 2 moons ago, losing 3 trappers and most of their winter take. The Crow themselves had skirmished with Sioux war parties pushing into their hunting grounds. 2 of their young men had been killed, a serious blow to a small band. Bad sign. Two Moons says gravely. Sioux moving west, many guns, many warriors. Harris nods, equally serious. Government pushing them from the east. Everybody's getting squeezed. This was the reality of the changing frontier. Tribes being displaced by white settlement pushed into other tribes' territories, creating a deadly domino effect of conflict. The mountain men, caught in the middle, had to navigate these complex tribal politics just to survive. You hunt beaver, Two Moons asks, eyeing your stretched pelts. Some, Harris replies cautiously. Beaver trapping was a sensitive subject with many tribes who increasingly recognized that the mountain men were depleting a valuable resource. Two Moons makes a sweeping gesture toward the mountains. Our hunting grounds, many beaver. You trap, you trade with us, yes? No take to fort. Harris doesn't commit immediately. Your beaver, your territory, he acknowledges, but the company expects pelts. Company not here, Two Moons points out reasonably. We here, Blackfoot here. The implication is clear. The Crow are offering protection in exchange for first rights to trade. We can work something out, Harris concedes. Some for you, some for the fort. Two Moons nods, satisfied with this compromise. More words are exchanged, arrangements made for future meetings. Throughout it all, you observe the careful balance Harris maintains, respectful but not subservient, friendly but not overly familiar. It's diplomatic tightrope walking of the highest order. As the trading winds down, one of the younger Crow not walks far, but another whose name you didn't catch approaches you directly. He points to your rifle, then to himself, making his interest clear. He wants to see your Hawken, Harris translates unnecessarily. You hesitate. A man's rifle was his life out here, not something casually handed over to strangers. But refusing could be taken as an insult. Just let him look, Harris advises quietly. Don't give it to him loaded. Carefully, you check that the rifle is unloaded before passing it to the young warrior. He accepts it with reverent hands, admiring the octagonal barrel and the brass fittings. His fingers trace the wooden stock, worn smooth by use. Good medicine, he says in halting English. Kill buffalo far away? You nod. Yes, good for buffalo, good for elk. The warrior raises the rifle to his shoulder, sighting along the barrel toward a distant tree. His form is perfect, clearly familiar with firearms. After a moment, he hands it back to you with obvious reluctance. Someday I get rifle like this, he says. Trade many horses. You nod, understanding his desire. For the Plains tribes, adopting firearms wasn't just about having better weapons. It was about survival in a changing world. Those without guns were increasingly at the mercy of those who had them. Two Moons gives a command, and his men begin mounting up. The trading is over. As a final gesture, the Crow leader approaches you directly. You trap with Black Harris, you learn good, he says. But remember, mountains have many eyes. Blackfoot not like beaver trappers. They kill quick. He draws a finger across his throat to emphasize the point. You see strange tracks. You come to our village. He points east. 3 days' ride. Yellow clay cliffs. We help. Thank you, you reply, genuinely moved by the offer of protection. Two Moons nods, then turns to Harris. Snow melting soon. Big water coming. Be careful at river crossing. With that warning delivered, he mounts his horse with fluid grace. The Crow band departs as they arrived in a jingle of metal ornaments and a flash of colourful blankets against the snow. Within minutes, they've disappeared into the trees. Well, Harris says, settling back by the fire, that was educational. They seemed friendlier than I expected, you admit. Harris snorts. Course they were. We're on their good side. You should see 'em when they're not feeling so charitable. He taps his chest, where a barely visible scar peeks above his shirt collar. Got this from a crow arrow about 10 years back. Misunderstanding about some horses. You swallow hard. But you said they were allies. They are. Now. Harris shrugs. Out here, alliances shift like river sand. Today's friend might be tomorrow's enemy, depending on who's got what and who's threatening whom. He pokes at the fire thoughtfully. 2 moons is solid, though. Man of his word. If he says we can trap his territory and trade with his band, he'll stick to it. You digest this information, understanding better now the complex web of relationships that kept a mountain man alive. It wasn't just about skills and courage, it was about knowing who to trust, when to trade, and how to navigate the human terrain of the frontier. What he said about the Blackfoot, you begin. Wasn't exaggerating, Harris finishes grimly. They hate trappers worse than poison, blame us for bringing disease, for taking beaver, for trading with their enemies. He spits into the fire. Can't really fault their logic. We have brought all those things. This was the moral ambiguity of frontier life laid bare. The mountain men were invaders in a sense, disrupting economies and ecologies that had existed for centuries, yet they saw themselves as free men, pursuing the right to make their way in an open wilderness. So, what do we do if we encounter Blackfoot, you ask? Pray they don't see us first, Harris says bluntly. If they do, and there's just a few, might be we can talk our way out. I speak enough of their tongue to be polite. If there's many, he shrugs. We run, hide, or fight. Not many other options. The casual way he discusses potential death sends a chill through you that has nothing to do with the mountain air. This was the reality behind the romantic myths, constant vigilance, knowing that each day might be your last. Those moccasins I traded for, Harris says, changing the subject. They're for you. Your boots are falling apart and badly made footwear will kill you faster than most anything else out here. You accept the gift with genuine gratitude. The moccasins are beautiful, lined with rabbit fur and beaded with blue and white designs. More importantly, they're sturdy and waterproof, functional art that could save your toes from frostbite. Thank you, you say, immediately removing your worn leather boots to try them on. Don't thank me, Harris grunts. Thank 2 moons next time. I traded those needles specific for those moccasins. Saw you limping yesterday. The moccasins fit perfectly, as if made for your feet. The comfort compared to your old boots is immediate and dramatic. How'd they know my size? You wonder aloud. Harris chuckles. They didn't. Crow women make 'em one size. Big. You stuff 'em with grass or rabbit fur till they fit just right. He tosses you a handful of dried grass. Here, padding for the toes. You stuff the grass into the toes of the moccasins, marveling at the simple ingenuity of the design. They conform to your feet, providing support without restriction. No wonder mountain men often adopted native footwear over European styles. Trading ain't just about goods, Harris says, watching you adjust your new footwear. It's about survival. Man alone out here trying to make everything himself. He's dead inside a season. Gotta have partners, allies. He gestures to your feet. Those moccasins might save your life when we cross the high passes, worth more than their weight in beaver pelts. You nod, understanding better now. The mountain man wasn't the solitary hero of dime novels conquering the wilderness alone. He was a connector, a cultural bridge between worlds, relying on a network of relationships to survive. We move camp tomorrow, Harris announces, checking the position of the sun. 2 moons was right about the snowmelt. This valley's gonna flood soon. Need to get to higher ground before the trails turn to mud. You look around at the camp you've grown accustomed to. The lean-to shelters, the established fire pit, the familiar landmarks, the prospect of moving, of starting again somewhere new, fills you with both excitement and apprehension. Where to, you ask? Harris points west toward a notch between two snow-capped peaks. There's a high valley about 2 days' travel. Good beaver, good hunting, and easier to defend if trouble comes calling. He eyes the sky thoughtfully. Weather looks fair. We'll pack tonight. Head out at first light. You nod, already mentally inventorying your meager possessions. In the mountains, a man travelled light or not at all. Everything had to earn its keep, justify the effort of carrying it over difficult terrain. "Ah, those crow," you say after a moment's reflection. "They're not what I expected." Harris raises an eyebrow. "How so?" "They seemed practical, smart, not like the savages in the stories." Harris spits disgustedly. "Those stories are horseshit, written by men who never set foot west of the Mississippi. Indians ain't savages, and they ain't noble mystics either. They're people, some good, some bad, most just trying to survive, same as us." He fixes you with a hard stare. "Remember that. Might save your life someday." You nod, chastened by the rebuke, but appreciating the wisdom behind it. The frontier was teaching you to see clearly, to shed preconceptions that could prove fatal in this unforgiving land. As you begin packing for tomorrow's journey, you reflect on how much you've already learned, not just about trapping and trading, but about the complex human geography of the mountains. The wilderness demanded not only physical endurance, but also a kind of social intelligence, knowing who to trust, how to communicate across cultural divides, when to stand firm and when to compromise. These were the true skills of the mountain man, as essential to survival as fire-making or marksmanship, and like those more tangible abilities, they could only be acquired through experience, through trial and error in a landscape where errors were rarely forgiven. Night falls as you finish your preparations, transforming the snow-covered valley into a silver landscape under a rising moon. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new territories to navigate. But tonight, with your belly full of traded pemmican and your feet warm in crow moccasins, you feel a growing confidence in your ability to face whatever the mountains might throw at you. Harris, seasoned by decades in the wilderness, catches your expression and offers a rare smile. "You're learning, Greenhorn," he says. "Might make a mountain man of you yet." Coming from him, it's the highest praise imaginable. You sleep soundly that night, dreaming not of civilization's comforts, but of high valleys and beaver streams, of successful trades and new allies in a vast wild land that's slowly becoming home. Dawn breaks with a symphony of birdsong. The forest around you stirs to life as you and Harris finish breaking camp. You've become efficient at this nomadic routine. Shelters dismantled, fire properly extinguished, all traces of your presence minimized. Not just to leave no trace, but because in these mountains, leaving obvious signs of your passing was like sending an engraved invitation to trouble. "Ready?" Harris asks, securing the last bundle to his pack horse. You've packed lighter than you thought possible, your entire life now contained in a bedroll, possible bag, and a few strategically tied bundles. "Ready?" you confirm, adjusting your new moccasins. The crow-made footwear already feels like part of your feet, conforming perfectly to every contour. The journey west is arduous, climbing steadily into higher elevations. The trails, if they can be called that, are often little more than game paths winding through dense forest and across rocky slopes. Harris leads with the confidence of a man reading a well-marked map, though no such luxury exists. His mental geography, built through years of exploration, guides you through passes and around obstacles invisible to your untrained eye. "See that notch?" Harris points to a V-shaped cut between two peaks ahead. "That's Thunder Pass. Valley we want is just beyond." You study the distant landmark, trying to commit it to memory. Mountain men navigated by such features: distinctive peaks, unusual rock formations, river confluences. In a landscape without signposts, these natural markers were their compass points. By midday, you've gained significant elevation. The air thins noticeably, each breath delivering less satisfaction to your lungs. You fight the urge to pant, knowing it would only waste precious energy. "Hold up," Harris suddenly whispers, raising his hand in the universal sign to stop. You freeze instantly, eyes scanning for danger. Harris points silently to a clearing ahead. Through the trees, you spot movement, a small herd of elk grazing peacefully, unaware of your presence. Your stomach tightens with anticipation. Fresh meat would be a welcome change from jerky and pemmican. With practiced stealth, Harris slips his rifle from its scabbard. He motions for you to stay put, then begins a careful stalk toward the clearing. You watch, mesmerized by his skill. Despite his size and age, he moves with remarkable silence, each footstep placed with deliberate care. The lead cow suddenly raises her head, nostrils flaring. Harris freezes mid-step, becoming part of the landscape. Long seconds pass as the elk surveys her surroundings. Eventually, satisfied there's no threat, she returns to grazing. Harris continues his approach, using trees for cover, moving only when the wind rustles branches to mask any sound. You lose sight of him for a moment, then the sharp crack of his rifle shatters the mountain silence. The herd bolts in panic, but one cow stumbles, then collapses. A clean shot. Harris emerges from the trees, already reloading his Hawken with practiced efficiency. He beckons you forward. "That's dinner," he announces with satisfaction as you reach him. "And breakfast, lunch and dinner for the next while too." The elk lies still, a small entry wound visible behind her shoulder, a perfect heart shot, clean, quick, humane. You've seen Harris pass up shots he wasn't confident in, explaining that wounding an animal that escapes to die slowly was both cruel and wasteful. "Better get to work before the scavengers show up," Harris says, unsheathing his hunting knife. "I'll show you how to break her down proper." What follows is a masterclass in frontier butchery. Harris works with practiced precision, showing you exactly where to cut to maximize the usable meat while minimizing waste. "Always thank the animal," he murmurs as he begins. "Indians got that right. Everything gives its life so something else can live. Least we can do is be grateful and use every part." You watch carefully as he demonstrates how to skin the elk without puncturing the hide, a valuable resource in itself. The hide would become clothing, containers, or trade goods. Nothing would be wasted. "Now you try," Harris says, handing you his knife and guiding your hands to the proper position. Firm pressure, but gentle. Follow the natural seams between muscle groups. Your first cuts are clumsy, but Harris corrects you patiently. "Not so deep there, that's it. Now angle the blade this way to follow the bone." The work is bloody and exhausting, but oddly satisfying. This is sustenance in its most direct form. No middleman, no processing plants, just you and the animal and the knife. By the time you finish, your arms ache and your clothes are stained, but a substantial pile of meat lies ready for processing. "Not bad," Harris concedes, inspecting your work. "Bit rough in spots, but you'll get better. Now for the important part, making it last." Some of the choicest cuts, the tenderloins and backstrap, Harris sets aside for immediate cooking. The rest he begins to slice into thin strips. "Out here, fresh meat's a luxury," he explains. "Most of this needs to be preserved. Some will smoke, some will dry, and some," he grins, "will make into pemmican. Best trail food ever invented." As you help slice the meat, Harris explains the process. Pemmican's simple, but takes work. Dry the meat till it's brittle, pound it to powder, mix with rendered fat and berries if you've got 'em. Done right, it'll keep for years. He instructs you to gather wood for a smoking rack while he continues processing. By the time you return with an armload of green branches, he's constructed a simple frame over which the meat strips will be draped. All low heat, lots of smoke, he directs as you build a fire beneath the rack. Want to dry it, not cook it. As the meat begins to smoke, Harris turns his attention to rendering fat. He carefully cuts chunks of tallow from around the elk's kidneys, the highest quality fat. "This here's the gold," he explains, placing the fat in your camp kettle. Cleanest fat on the animal. Melts down smooth, no gamey taste. The process is time-consuming but methodical. While the meat smokes, the fat renders slowly over a separate small fire, transforming from solid chunks to clear liquid gold. Harris occasionally skims impurities from the surface with a wooden spoon. "My first winter in the mountains," Harris reminisces as he works. "I damn near starved because I didn't know how to preserve meat proper. Shot a deer, ate what I could, rest spoiled before I knew it. Learned quick after that." The afternoon stretches into evening as the preservation work continues. Harris rotates the meat strips occasionally, ensuring even drying. The smell is intoxicating, smoky, savory, primal. "Company coming," Harris suddenly announces, though you've heard nothing. Moments later, you detect the distant sound of horses approaching. Your hand moves instinctively toward your rifle. "Easy," Harris cautions. "That'll be Jackson's bunch. They trap the next valley over." Sure enough, 3 riders soon appear on the trail below. They approach openly, hands visible, the frontier etiquette that distinguished friend from foe. As they draw closer, Harris raises a hand in greeting. "'Bout time you showed up," he calls. "Thought the Blackfoot might have got you?" The lead rider, a weathered man perhaps older than Harris, laughs. "Takes more than Blackfoot to put old Caleb Jackson under. Smelled your smoke from a mile off, figured it was either you or a forest fire." The men dismount and you're introduced to Caleb Jackson and his companions, a taciturn mountain man called Broken Hand Peterson and a younger trapper not much older than yourself, introduced simply as Webb. "My new shadow," Harris says, nodding toward you. "Teaching him the ropes." Jackson surveys you with calculating eyes. "Hope he's a quick study. Mountains don't suffer slow learners." "He'll do," Harris says, and the simple affirmation fills you with unexpected pride. The new arrivals unsaddle their horses and make themselves comfortable around your fire. Frontier hospitality demands sharing food and fire with visitors, a custom born of mutual dependence in a harsh land. "Brought something to wet our whistles," Jackson announces, producing a small jug from his pack. "Missouri whiskey, the real stuff, not that rock gut they sell at Rendezvous." Harris's eyes light up. Alcohol was a rare luxury in the mountains, carefully rationed and saved for special occasions. Well now, that changes the complexion of the evening. Jackson passes the jug, and each man takes a modest swig. Even in celebration, wasting precious spirits was foolish. When the jug reaches you, you take a cautious sip. The whiskey burns like liquid fire, but spreads a welcome warmth through your tired body. As night falls, you feast on fresh elk meat, roasted simply over the fire. The conversation flows as freely as circumstances allow, with news exchanged and stories shared. These informal gatherings were the mountain man's newspaper, post office, and social club combined. Heard the American Fur Company's offering $5 a plume this season, Webb mentions between bites. Beavers getting scarce. Oh, $5 won't matter if you can't get your furs to market, Peterson counters in his gravelly voice. Blackfoot's been hitting the supply trains hard. 3 outfits ambushed last month. This sparks a discussion of routes and danger zones. Information more valuable than gold in the mountains? You listen intently, mentally mapping safe passages and areas to avoid. As the meal concludes, Harris returns to the task of pemmican making. The dried meat, now brittle as old leather, is ready for the next step. He places portions in a clean hide, then demonstrates how to use a smooth riverstone as a hammer, pounding the meat into fine powder. "Your turn," he says, handing you the stone. "Arm'll feel like it's falling off before you're done, but that's the price of eating through winter." You set to work, pounding rhythmically. The physical labor is indeed exhausting, but there's something meditative about the repetitive motion. Jackson watches with approval. "Making pemmican, eh? Smart. Saved my life more'n once." He rolls up his sleeve to reveal a gnarled scar on his forearm. Winter of 29, trapped by a blizzard in the Bitterroots for 16 days, nothing but pemmican between me and the boneyard. These casual references to near-death experiences were common among mountain men. Survival stories weren't told for dramatic effect, but as practical lessons. This worked, this didn't. Here's how to live if it happens to you. As your pile of powdered meat grows, Harris checks the rendered fat, now perfectly clear. "Just right," he pronounces. "Now for the magic." He demonstrates mixing the meat powder with the hot fat in approximately equal proportions, working quickly before the fat solidifies. To this base, he adds dried choke cherries from his supplies and a handful of crushed nuts. "Berries prevent scurvy," he explains. "Indians figured that out long before white doctors did. Man can live on nothing but pemmican for months and stay healthy, long as it's got berries mixed in." The resulting mixture is packed into small rawhide pouches sealed with more fat. When cooled, each package becomes a concentrated brick of nutrition, impervious to spoilage and weather. 3 of these will keep a man going for a week of hard travel, Harris says with satisfaction. "Not fancy eating, but it'll keep you alive." As the evening deepens, Jackson produces a deck of cards, worn, greasy, but complete. Card games were one of the few entertainments available in the wilderness, played for stakes ranging from trinkets to horses to life-saving supplies. "Friendly game," he suggests, shuffling with surprising dexterity for hands so weathered. Soon, a poker game is underway, played by firelight with stakes of coffee beans substituting for money. You join in, though your meager possessions limit your betting. The conversation continues over cards, turning to plans for the upcoming rendezvous. "Heard it's at Green River this year," Webb says, studying his cards. "Company's bringing 60 pack mules of trade goods." Rendezvous, the annual gathering of trappers, traders, and Indians, was the highlight of the mountain calendar. For a few weeks each summer, hundreds would converge to trade fairs, replenish supplies, exchange news, and celebrate with legendary abandon. For men who spent most of the year in isolation or small groups, it was a vital release valve for the pressures of wilderness life. "Planning to attend?" Harris asks Jackson. "Wouldn't miss it," the older trapper replies. "Got 3 years' worth of beaver to trade. Might even head back to St. Louis after, getting too old for winter in the mountains." This was a common refrain among aging mountain men. The physical toll of the lifestyle eventually forced most to seek easier circumstances, though many struggled to readjust to civilization after years in the wild. As the card game winds down, Peterson, who has spoken little all evening, suddenly addresses you directly. "Saw you working that elk. Not bad technique for a greenhorn. Coming from the taciturn trapper, this constitutes high praise." You thank him awkwardly. "Or still cutting too deep, though," he continues. "Wastes meat and dulls your knife. Here." He pulls his own hunting knife and demonstrates a more efficient technique on a piece of scrap hide. Blade almost parallel to the surface. Let the edge do the work. Save your strength for when you need it. This casual sharing of knowledge was how wilderness skills passed from veteran to novice. No formal instruction, just observation, correction, and practice under the critical eyes of those who had survived long enough to become experts. As the night grows late, the conversation turns to the spiritual side of mountain life. Webb, the youngest of Jackson's group, recounts a strange experience during his first solo hunt. Was tracking a bull elk up near Thunderhead Peak, he begins, his voice dropping. Got caught in a storm like nothing I ever seen, lightning hitting all around me. Took shelter under an overhang and there was paintings on the rock. Old paintings, Indian magic, I guess. Spent the night there, had dreams so real I could taste 'em. No one scoffs at his story. The mountains had a way of producing experiences that defied rational explanation. Most trappers, regardless of their background, developed a hybrid spirituality that incorporated both European and native elements, a respect for forces beyond human understanding. Indians believe the thunder beings live in those peaks, Harris comments. Powerful medicine, dangerous to disturb. The conversation might seem superstitious to outsiders, but in the wilderness, where death could come from 100 different directions, respecting local beliefs was just another survival strategy. Many a trapper had been saved by knowledge passed down through native traditions, which plants healed, which waters were safe to drink, how to read weather patterns specific to certain valleys. As the fire burns down to coals, Jackson's group prepares to continue their journey. Despite the late hour, they prefer traveling in the cool of night through certain territories. Blackfoot don't like moving after dark, Jackson explains. Too many bad spirits about, makes for safer passage. Before departing, he presents Harris with a small leather pouch. Almost forgot. Found this plant you were looking for. Old medicine woman at the Flathead camp showed me where it grows. Harris accepts the gift with obvious gratitude. Later, he explains to you that the plant, a particular type of root, makes a tea that eases his rheumatism, a painful souvenir of decades spent sleeping on cold ground. After Jackson's party disappears into the darkness, you and Harris add the final batches of pemmican to your supplies. The day's work has yielded enough preserved meat to last weeks, an investment of labor that could mean the difference between survival and starvation in the unpredictable mountain environment. Get some sleep, Harris advises as you bank the fire for the night. We'll reach the valley by midday tomorrow if we start early. As you settle into your bedroll, muscles aching from the day's exertions, you reflect on how much you've learned in just a few short months. Not just practical skills like trapping and pemmican making, but the subtler arts of mountain life. The social codes, the information networks, the blend of self-reliance and interdependence that kept men alive in the wilderness. Harris, smoking a final pipe by the fire, seems to read your thoughts. Learning fast, he comments. Almost didn't cut yourself skinning that elk. You smile at the backhanded compliment. Still have all my fingers. For now, he agrees. Mountains'll take their pound of flesh eventually. Always do. There's no bitterness in his statement, just the pragmatic acceptance that characterized the mountain man's worldview. The night deepens around your small camp, the vast bowl of stars overhead seeming close enough to touch. Unlike the artificial brightness of your modern bedroom, this darkness feels alive, textured with the sounds of the wilderness, the distant call of an owl, the rustle of nocturnal creatures, the soft sigh of wind through pine boughs. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, but tonight, wrapped in buffalo robe with a full stomach and new knowledge, you feel a deepening connection to this harsh but beautiful world. The mountains are not conquered. No man could claim such a thing, but perhaps with time and respect and the right teachers, they might allow you to remain a while longer in their magnificent indifference. Morning comes with stiffness in your joints and frost on your bedroll. You've grown accustomed to waking in discomfort. It's the mountain man's alarm clock. Harris is already up, nursing a small fire and studying the sky with concern. "Don't like those clouds," he mutters as you join him by the fire. "Weather's turning." You follow his gaze to the western horizon. What seemed like harmless wisps at first glance now register as something more ominous. Dark smudges spreading across the blue, moving fast with the high-altitude winds. "Storm?" you ask, accepting the tin cup of coffee he offers. "Big one. From the look. We need to push hard, reach that valley before it hits." Harris kicks dirt over the fire after filling his own cup. "No time for breakfast beyond coffee. We'll eat while we ride." You pack quickly, muscles working on automatic after months of the same routine. The horses sense the urgency, stamping nervously as you secure your gear. Animals know when bad weather approaches long before humans catch on. The trail steepens as you continue toward Thunder Pass. What began as a relatively easy forest path turns into a grueling switchback climb over loose shale and exposed rock faces. The horses struggle in spots, forcing you to dismount and lead them through the trickiest sections. Trail gets better on the other side, Harris promises, noticing your labored breathing. The thinning air at this elevation makes every step an effort. The clouds continue their relentless advance, darkening now, their edges turning an ominous purple-grey. The wind picks up, carrying a biting chill that cuts through your buckskins. "Might not make the valley," Harris admits as you pause to rest the horses. "Need to start thinking about alternatives." Halfway up a mountain during an approaching storm was nobody's idea of an ideal situation. You scan the terrain, trying to think like Harris has taught you. What would provide shelter? Where would be safest? There, you point to a rocky outcropping about half a mile off the trail. Would that work? Harris studies your suggestion with a critical eye, then nods approvingly. "Good eye. Got an overhang, some wind protection. Might do in a pinch." You continue climbing, pushing harder now as the first distant rumble of thunder reaches your ears. The wind gusts stronger, carrying the unmistakable scent of rain. The horses grow increasingly skittish, sensing the coming storm. Just as you reach a relatively flat section near the pass summit, disaster strikes. Harris's pack horse steps into a hidden hole, stumbling violently. Though the animal catches itself, the sudden movement shifts its load. Before either of you can react, Harris's carefully packed supplies tumble down the steep slope behind you, bouncing and scattering across hundreds of feet of rocky terrain. "Son of a bitch," Harris curses, quickly dismounting to secure the remaining gear before it follows. "Everything we can't afford to lose just went over the side." The implications hit you immediately. Those packs contained most of your food, ammunition, and winter supplies. Critical items that meant the difference between comfort and privation, possibly even between life and death. Harris surveys the scattered gear with a practiced eye. Most of it looks recoverable, but it'll take time we don't have with this storm coming. He makes a quick decision. "I'll go after the supplies. You push onto that outcropping you spotted. Start setting up shelter. I'll join you there." "Shouldn't we stick together?" you ask, uneasy about separating in deteriorating conditions. "Can't risk losing those supplies," Harris says firmly. "You've learned enough to handle yourself for a few hours. Take my horse, leave yours for me to pack recovered gear." There's no time to argue. Harris transfers his rifle and a few essentials to a small pack, gives you brief directions to the outcropping, and starts picking his way down the treacherous slope. You watch him for a moment, admiring the sure-footed confidence with which he navigates terrain that would make a mountain goat pause. "Don't wait on me if the storm hits full force," he calls back. "Get shelter built and fire started while you still can." With that, he disappears around a bend, leaving you alone on the windswept mountainside. You take a deep breath, fighting down a flutter of anxiety. This is the first time you've been truly on your own since joining Harris. The responsibility sits heavy on your shoulders. Leading both remaining horses, you make your way toward the outcropping. The wind strengthens with each passing minute, now carrying occasional fat droplets of rain, harbingers of the deluge to come. The temperature drops noticeably, the mountain's way of announcing that this storm means business. By the time you reach the outcropping, the sky has transformed completely. What began as scattered clouds has become a rolling, seething mass of darkness that swallows the sun. The distant thunder has become a constant rumble, punctuated by sharper cracks that echo across the peaks. You secure the horses in a natural enclosure formed by fallen boulders where they'll have some protection from the elements. Then you assess your shelter options. The outcropping does indeed have a promising overhang, not quite a cave, but a significant lip of stone that projects outward, creating a semi-protected space beneath. Okay, you mutter to yourself, recalling Harris's lessons on emergency shelters. Need to close in the sides, create a windbreak, set up a fire reflector. You begin gathering materials, fallen branches, pine boughs, rocks of suitable size. The rain increases from scattered drops to a steady patter, adding urgency to your work. Your hands move with growing confidence, muscle memory taking over as you implement techniques Harris drilled into you during calmer days. First, a framework of sturdy branches to extend the natural shelter. These you lash together using rawhide strips from your possible bag. Next, a layer of pine boughs arranged in overlapping rows like shingles to shed water. Around the sides, a combination of stones and more branches creates a windbreak, leaving only a small opening facing away from the prevailing wind. Inside this growing structure, you clear a space for a fire, constructing a reflector wall of flat stones that will direct heat back into the shelter rather than letting it dissipate into the mountain air. Every step is accompanied by Harris's voice in your head. "Higher on that side. Pack those boughs tighter. Leave a smoke hole or you'll suffocate yourself." The rain becomes a steady downpour as you work. Your clothes grow sodden, then begin to chill you as the temperature continues to drop. Fingers growing numb, you force yourself to work faster. A mountain storm in autumn could easily bring snow, especially at this elevation. Hypothermia was a constant threat, claiming unwary travelers who underestimated the mountain's capacity for sudden, lethal cold. By the time the shelter takes recognizable form, you're shivering uncontrollably. Getting a fire started becomes your next urgent priority. You gather tinder and kindling, protecting it under your coat as you carry it to the shelter. From your possible bag comes your fire-making kit: flint, steel, and a small tin of char cloth, the blackened linen that catches sparks and nurtures them into flame. "Come on," you murmur, striking steel against flint, sending sparks toward the waiting char cloth. Your cold, stiffened fingers make the task harder than usual. After several frustrating attempts, a spark finally catches, creating a glowing ember in the char cloth. You nurture this tiny spark with the reverence of a priest tending a sacred flame, carefully transferring it to a waiting nest of dry grass and shredded bark. Gentle breath, not too strong, not too weak, coaxes the ember into a small flame. You feed it carefully, gradually adding larger pieces of kindling until a proper fire blazes in your stone fireplace. The shelter transforms with the fire's birth. What was a damp, uninviting space becomes a haven of warmth and light. You hang your soaked outer garments near the flames to dry, keeping on enough layers to maintain modesty, but allowing your body to benefit from the fire's heat. Outside, the storm unleashes its full fury. Rain turns to sleet, then to driving snow that hisses as it hits the ground. Wind howls through the mountain pass, testing your shelter's construction. You make ongoing adjustments, adding reinforcement here, improving drainage there, as you identify weaknesses. 2 hours pass with no sign of Harris. Concern grows in your gut, though you try to suppress it. He's the most capable woodsman you've ever met, certainly able to handle himself in a storm. Still, accidents happen even to the most experienced. You venture out briefly to check on the horses, finding them huddled together in their stone enclosure, rumps to the wind in the instinctive posture of plains animals weathering a storm. You throw your spare blanket over them for additional protection, then hurry back to your shelter, the brief exposure to the elements renewing your shivering. Back by the fire, you take stock of your supplies. Harris's saddlebags contained some basic provisions: jerky, coffee, a small pouch of pemmican, enough to sustain you for a few days if necessary. You have ammunition for your rifle, basic medical supplies, and fire-making materials. Not comfortable, but survivable. The day darkens toward evening, with still no sign of Harris. The storm shows no indication of abating. If anything, it intensifies as night approaches. Mountain storms could last hours or days. There was no predicting their duration. "Okay," you say aloud, needing to hear a human voice, even if only your own. "If he's not back by morning, I'll need to go looking." You add more wood to the fire, creating a stockpile within easy reach for the night. Sleep would be fitful at best, requiring regular waking to maintain the flames. Cold and exposure killed more mountain men than Indians or grizzlies combined, a fact Harris had impressed upon you early in your training. As darkness falls completely, transforming your shelter into a small island of firelight in an ocean of howling blackness, your thoughts turn to Harris. Where was he? Had he recovered the supplies, found shelter of his own, or had the mountain claimed another victim? Adding his name to the long list of those who ventured into the wilderness never to return. You shake off such morbid speculation. Harris was too skilled, too stubborn to succumb easily. More likely he'd found shelter lower down the slope, perhaps in the forest where tree cover would provide natural protection. The night deepens. You maintain the fire, dozing in short bursts between tending the flames. The storm continues its assault, rattling your shelter and driving snow through even the smallest gaps in your construction. You make ongoing improvements, learning through trial what works and what doesn't. This practical education, gained through direct experience rather than instruction, was the mountain man's true schooling. Sometime in the night's darkest hours, over the wind's howl, you detect a new sound, a shout, human and nearby. You scramble to the shelter's entrance, peering into the storm-lashed darkness. "Harris?" you call, voice nearly lost in the wind. "Here," comes the faint reply. Following the sound, you spot a figure struggling up the slope toward your shelter, bent against the wind's force. You rush out, fighting the gale to reach him. It's indeed Harris, snow-covered and exhausted, but alive. Together you stagger back to the shelter, where the fire's warmth provides immediate, blessed relief. Thought you might be dead, you admit, helping him remove his frozen outer garments. Harris manages a weary grin. Takes more than a little mountain tantrum to finish me. His expression grows more serious, but it was close, got caught in a slide, loose rocks coming down the slope, barely dodged the worst of it. He accepts a cup of hot coffee with hands trembling from cold and exhaustion. Managed to recover most of the supplies, he reports, stashed them under a rock shelf about half a mile down, too heavy to bring up in these conditions. We can get them after the storm, you assure him, secretly relieved that his delay hadn't been due to injury or worse. Harris surveys your shelter with an appraising eye. Not bad work, he concedes. Wouldn't have expected better from men with years in the mountains. Coming from him, this is high praise indeed. You feel a surge of pride that warms you more effectively than the fire. Could use some improvements, though, he adds, never one to let satisfaction breed complacency. Smoke holes too small, and you need better drainage around the base. Water will pool otherwise, soak through your bedding. Even exhausted and half frozen, Harris can't help teaching. You welcome the critique, knowing each lesson improves your chances of survival in this unforgiving environment. As Harris warms and recovers, he shares details of his misadventure. The pack recovery had gone reasonably well until the weather deteriorated dramatically. What began as rain quickly turned to sleet, then blinding snow driven by gale-force winds. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Couldn't see 3 feet ahead, he explains, sipping his coffee. Started back up the slope anyway, figuring I'd rather freeze moving than sitting still. That's when the slide hit, tons of rock and shale breaking loose above me. He describes diving behind an outcropping just as the main force of the slide thundered past. Close enough that rocks were bouncing off my back, he says, with the casual tone mountain men often used when recounting near-death experiences. After the slide, disoriented and increasingly cold, Harris had nearly taken a wrong turn that would have led him away from your position. Only the momentary parting of the snow squalls, revealing the silhouette of your ridge against the sky, had allowed him to correct his course. Saw the firelight soon after, he concludes, like a lighthouse in a storm. Good job keeping it bright. The simple acknowledgement means more than any elaborate praise. In the mountains, action spoke louder than words, and keeping a strong fire during a storm was one of the most fundamental survival skills. As the night progresses, the storm begins to abate. The wind's howl diminishes to a moaning sigh, then to occasional gusts. The driving snow thins, then stops entirely, leaving behind an eerie silence broken only by the gentle crackle of your fire. Storms breaking, Harris observes, peering out at the night sky now visible through patches in the clouds. Stars coming out, temperature will drop hard now. This was a weather pattern familiar to mountain dwellers. The clearing after a storm often brought the coldest temperatures as the cloud cover that trapped warmth dissipated, allowing heat to escape into the vast emptiness of the night sky. Better reinforce the shelter, Harris suggests, and build up the fire. It'll be bitter by dawn. Despite your exhaustion, you help Harris gather additional insulation materials, more pine boughs, dry grass where you can find it, anything to create dead air spaces that would trap body heat. The mountain man's approach to cold was proactive. Prepare before you feel the full force of dropping temperatures. In the morning, we'll reassess, Harris says, as you both finally settle by the fire. Might push on to the valley if the trail's passable, might need to stay put another day if there's too much snow. This flexibility was another essential trait of the mountain man. Rigid plans killed, adaptability survived. Nature dictated the terms and the wise trapper adjusted accordingly. The remainder of the night passes in relative comfort, your improved shelter keeping the worst of the cold at bay. You take turns tending the fire, each grabbing a few hours of uninterrupted rest. By the time dawn approaches, you feel reasonably restored despite the previous day's ordeals. Morning reveals a transformed landscape. Every surface bears a coating of fresh snow, not deep but enough to obscure trail markers and change familiar landmarks. The sun rises into a crystal clear sky, its light almost painfully bright as it reflects off the pristine white covering. "Beautiful," you murmur, taking in the scene from the shelter entrance. "And dangerous," Harris adds practically. "Snow hides deadfalls, loose rocks, all sorts of hazards. We'll move slow today, test each step." After a breakfast of jerky and coffee, you dismantle the shelter, another mountain man practice. Leaving a structure intact was considered wasteful and potentially dangerous, as it might collapse on future travelers seeking refuge in the same spot. "Always leave a place better than you found it," Harris instructs as you work. "Next man through might be in worse shape than you were." With the campsite restored to its natural state, you begin the careful journey down to recover the cached supplies. The going is treacherous, the fresh snow concealing icy patches and unstable ground. Several times one or both of you slip, saved from serious falls only by quick reflexes and mutual assistance. You locate the supply cache without difficulty, finding the packs remarkably intact despite their tumbling descent. Together you reorganize and repack, then begin the slow climb back toward Thunder Pass. "Valley's still our best bet," Harris decides, studying the terrain ahead. "Trail should improve once we're over the pass. 2, maybe 3 hours travel if we push steady." The next hours prove Harris right about the snow's dangers. What would have been a challenging but straightforward hike becomes a constant negotiation with treacherous footing. Every step requires attention. Every slope presents hidden hazards. The mountain, beautiful in its winter dress, demands a lethal price for carelessness. By midday, you reach Thunder Pass itself, a narrow gap between towering rock faces, swept relatively clear of snow by the same winds that had driven yesterday's storm. Standing in the pass, you're rewarded with your first view of the valley beyond, a broad, sheltered expanse nestled between protective mountain arms. "Home for the winter," Harris announces, gesturing toward the distant valley floor. "Good water, good hunting, natural shelter. Many a trapper's wintered there over the years." You study the valley with growing excitement. After the ordeal of the storm and the exposed mountainside, the protected valley looks like paradise. Pine forests provide both shelter and fuel, meadows offer grazing for horses, and a river, visible as a silver thread from this distance, promises fish and beaver. The descent from the pass proves easier than the climb, though still demanding careful attention. As you lose elevation, the snow thins, eventually giving way to mere patches in shaded areas. The air warms noticeably as you drop into the valley's protective embrace. By late afternoon, you reach the valley floor. Harris leads you to a spot he clearly knows well. A small clearing near a bend in the river, sheltered by a natural amphitheatre of rock that would block the worst winter winds. "Old Broken Hand Fitzpatrick showed me this spot. Oh, must be 15 years back," Harris reminisces as you unsaddle weary horses. "Many a trapper's sheltered here over the years." You notice stone fire rings, remnants of previous occupants. This wasn't wilderness in the sense of being untouched. It was wilderness in the mountain man's understanding, a place where humans visited but didn't dominate, where nature still held the upper hand despite occasional human presence. "We'll build proper winter quarters tomorrow," Harris decides, surveying the site. "For tonight, basic shelter will do. We earned some rest." As you construct a simple lean-to and prepare an evening meal from your recovered supplies, you reflect on the lessons of the past 24 hours. The storm, the separation, the shelter building. Each challenge had pushed you beyond what you thought yourself capable of. You'd made mistakes, certainly, but you'd survived. In the mountain man's world, that was the only grade that mattered. Harris, warming himself by the newly built fire, seems to read your thoughts. "Did good up there," he says simply. "Most greenhorns would have panicked being left alone in a storm like that." "Almost did," you admit. He shakes his head. "No, you worked the problem, built shelter, made fire, secured the horses. That's not panic. That's becoming a mountain man." The simple endorsement fills you with quiet pride. You're not just surviving in the wilderness now, you're beginning to understand it, to work with rather than against its harsh realities. As night falls on the valley, bringing with it the distant howl of wolves and the first hard freeze since the storm, you settle into your bedroll with a newfound confidence. The mountains are still dangerous, still unforgiving of mistakes, but they're becoming comprehensible, a harsh teacher whose lessons once learned are never forgotten. Harris, smoking a final pipe before sleep, gazes thoughtfully into the fire. "Winter's coming fast," he observes. "Good time to be in this valley, with shelter built and meat stored." He looks up at the star-filled sky. Bad time to be caught unprepared in these mountains. You nod, understanding the implicit lesson. In the wilderness, survival wasn't about conquering nature, an impossible task, but about respecting its power and adapting to its rhythms. The mountain men who lived longest weren't the strongest or the bravest, but the wisest. Those who learned to read the land, the sky, the subtle signs that spelled the difference between life and death. Tomorrow would bring the labor of building winter quarters, of preparing for the long, cold months ahead. But tonight, warm by the fire in this sheltered valley, you've earned a moment of rest, a mountain man's simple reward for another day survived in the beautiful, brutal wilderness. The next few days pass in a blur of constant work. Winter quarters don't build themselves, and Harris is determined to have proper shelter before the deep cold sets in. Together, you construct a more substantial cabin than you'd initially imagined, not the crude lean-to you've been sleeping in, but a real mountain man's winter home. 3 things matter in winter quarters, Harris explains as you notch logs for the cabin walls. Tight construction to keep heat in, good drainage to keep water out, and proper placement to avoid slides and deadfalls. The site he's chosen meets all these requirements, high enough to avoid spring flooding, sheltered from avalanche paths, and positioned to catch morning sun while being protected from prevailing winds. Generations of trappers had refined such knowledge through brutal trial and error. By the 5th day, your cabin takes recognizable form, a simple rectangle of notched logs with a pitched roof of poles covered with pine boughs and finally a layer of earth. The floor is packed dirt, but Harris shows you how to create a raised sleeping platform that will keep you off the cold ground. A stone fireplace dominates one wall, constructed with the same care a city dweller might lavish on fine furniture. "Fire's your life in winter," Harris emphasizes, meticulously checking the draft. "Get this wrong, you'll either freeze or suffocate." With shelter secured, attention turns to building up food stores. The valley offers abundant game, but winter hunting can be uncertain. Better to secure meat now, when animals are fat, before winter's privations. "Need to learn the valley," Harris announces one crisp morning. "Time you started finding your own way around. Can't always rely on following my tracks." This declaration fills you with both pride and apprehension. Navigation in the wilderness was no simple matter. There were no street signs, no marked trails, often not even distinct landmarks in dense forest or featureless terrain. We'll start with something easy, Harris says, noting your expression. Ridge hunt for elk. Good game, good views for learning the lay of the land. You prepare carefully for the day's expedition, rifle cleaned and loaded, possible bag stocked with essentials, knife freshly honed. Harris watches your preparations with approval, occasionally offering refinements. His teaching style has evolved as your skills have grown. Fewer direct instructions, more guided discovery, allowing you to develop the independent judgment a mountain man needs. Dawn finds you climbing a forested ridge east of camp. Harris moves with deliberate slowness, using the hunt as an opportunity to impart navigation wisdom. Notice the sun, he says, pausing in a small clearing, rises in the east but not exactly east, changes with the seasons. He points to where the sun currently sits low over the horizon. Mid-autumn now, so it's rising southeast. Come deep winter, it'll rise even further south. This was the mountain man's compass, not the magnetic needle of civilization, but the celestial bodies themselves. Harris demonstrates how to maintain direction using the sun's position combined with time of day, a mental calculation that becomes second nature with practice. Well, what about cloudy days, you ask, envisioning the overcast skies of winter? Good question. Mountains themselves help. Notice how ridgelines run, how drainages flow. Everything follows patterns. Harris gestures to the surrounding landscape. Main divides generally run north-south in these ranges. Streams flow east or west from them. He shows you how to read terrain, not just the obvious features, but subtle signs invisible to untrained eyes, the density of vegetation on north versus south-facing slopes, the way certain trees grow more branches on their southern sides, the prevailing lean of weathered snags shaped by dominant winds. Lots of ways to keep your bearings, Harris continues as you climb higher. Indians say moss grows thicker on the north side of trees, but that's not always reliable. Better to use multiple signs, never trust just one. You absorb these lessons eagerly, understanding their vital importance. Men had died horribly within miles of safety, simply because they lost their way and couldn't regain it. In winter especially, a wrong turn could mean fatal exposure or starvation. The ridge opens to a grassy plateau, offering expansive views of the surrounding valley. Harris stops, allowing you to catch your breath while scanning for game. Now, the real test of navigation, he says, pointing to distant landmarks. Make a map in your head. Remember what things look like from different angles. That distinctive peak there. How it lines up with the river bend. That's a bearing you can use from anywhere in this valley. He quizzes you on directions, challenging you to identify return routes from various points. It's a mental exercise that feels unnatural at first. Modern humans are accustomed to external directional aids, not internalized spatial awareness. Most lost men make the same mistake, Harris observes. They panic, start moving too fast, don't take time to study where they are. Better to stop, make camp if necessary, get your bearings before continuing. You nod, filing away this wisdom. Patience, another survival trait that ran counter to instinct. When lost or in danger, the natural impulse was to act immediately, often making the situation worse. Movement catches your eye, a flash of tan against green at the far end of the plateau. Elk. A small herd grazing peacefully, unaware of your presence. Harris has already spotted them, signaling for absolute stillness. He studies the herd through narrowed eyes, assessing. Winds in our favor, he whispers. Need to circle round, get closer, watch how I move, where I place my feet. What follows is a master class in stalking. Harris becomes almost invisible, using every contour of the land for concealment, freezing into absolute stillness when any animal raises its head. You follow as best you can, mimicking his movements, learning through observation the art of moving unseen. The stalk takes over an hour to cover less than half a mile, painfully slow by civilized standards, but the patience of a hunter isn't measured by clocks. Finally, within effective rifle range, Harris gestures for you to take the shot. It's a significant moment. He's trusting your marksmanship with valuable meat. You ease into position, controlling your breathing as he taught you. The rifle feels natural against your shoulder now, an extension of your body rather than a foreign tool. You select your target, a young bull, not the herd leader, but a good compromise between meat quality and herd health. The hawken roars, sending birds scattering from nearby trees. Through the drifting smoke, you see the elk stagger, then collapse. The rest of the herd bolts, disappearing into the forest with remarkable speed for animals so large. Clean shot, Harris approves, already moving toward the fallen elk. Lung hit, quick death, no wasted meat. The approval warms you despite the chill air. In the mountains, such practical skills earned more respect than any amount of book learning or social graces. A man who could put meat on the fire was valuable. One who couldn't was a liability. Field dressing the elk is now familiar work, though Harris still offers occasional refinements to your technique. As you work, he continues the navigation lesson, pointing out how the position of the sun has changed, how shadows have shifted, how these changes affect your perception of landmarks. Come winter, days get short fast, he warns. Maybe 6-7 hours of good light. Plan accordingly. Man caught out after dark in February has slim chances. With the elk properly dressed, you face the challenge of transporting several hundred pounds of meat back to camp. Harris shows you how to construct a simple travois, a triangular frame of poles that can be dragged behind you, distributing the weight to make it manageable. Indians been using these for centuries, he explains as you lash poles together. Simple but effective. One man can move what 4 men might carry. Loaded with elk quarters, the travois proves its worth on the return journey. Though still physically demanding, it transforms an impossible task into merely a difficult one. You take turns pulling, using game trails where possible to ease the burden. The descent offers new navigation challenges. What seemed obvious climbing up becomes confusing going down. Landmarks appear different, sightlines change, familiar features disappear behind ridges. Harris uses these difficulties as teaching opportunities. Always look back regularly when traveling, he advises. Remember what the way home looks like. Different perspective coming and going. This habit, turning to study the back trail, becomes second nature as you practice it throughout the descent. It's one of many small disciplines that collectively constitute wilderness wisdom, none particularly dramatic, but each potentially life-saving in the right circumstances. Halfway down, Harris suddenly raises his hand for a halt. You freeze instantly, recognizing the signal for potential danger. His posture changes subtly, body tensing as he scans the surrounding forest. You follow his gaze but see nothing unusual. Grizzly, he whispers, nodding toward what appears to be an unremarkable section of forest. Big male, about 80 yards through those aspens. It takes several seconds before you spot it, a massive brown form partially hidden by brush, moving with surprising stealth for such a large animal. Your blood runs cold at the sight. Grizzlies were the undisputed monarchs of the mountains, capable of killing a man with terrifying ease. What do we do? You whisper, fighting the urge to raise your rifle. Nothing sudden, Harris murmurs. He knows we're here, smelled the elk blood for sure. We're downwind, or he'd have smelled us too. The bear continues its methodical movement, paralleling your trail but not approaching directly. Its massive head swings from side to side, testing the air currents. He's deciding if we're worth the trouble, Harris explains, his voice preternaturally calm. Most bears avoid men if they can. Problem is, we've got meat, and he can smell it. You stand motionless, barely breathing, as the massive predator considers its options. The travois with its bloody elk quarters suddenly seems like a terrible liability. Harris slowly, almost imperceptibly, shifts his rifle into a ready position without raising it. If he charges, he breathes. Aim for the chest, not the head. Skull's too thick for a sure kill. Chest shot might turn him at least. The bear rises briefly on its hind legs, its full height momentarily visible, an awesome sight that triggers primal fear. 7 feet tall at least, with paws that could decapitate a man with a single swipe. Then, with startling suddenness, it drops back to all fours and moves away, disappearing into thicker forest. You release a breath you didn't realize you were holding. Why'd it leave? Harris shrugs. Decided we weren't worth it. Maybe he's already fed. Maybe something in our scent warned him off. Bears have their own reasoning. He scans the forest carefully before signaling to continue. Keep alert, though. He might circle around, come at us from another direction. Grizzlies are crafty that way. The encounter adds tension to the remainder of your journey. Every snapping twig, every rustle in the underbrush draws immediate attention. The forest that seemed merely challenging before now feels actively threatening, full of hidden dangers beyond human control. This too was part of mountain life, the constant awareness of being neither at the top of the food chain nor particularly well adapted to the environment. Humans survived in the wilderness not through physical superiority but through knowledge, tools, and cooperation. Alone, a man was vulnerable. Together, with shared vigilance and complementary skills, survival odds improved dramatically. You reach camp without further incident, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the valley. The elk meat is quickly hung on a drying rack near the cabin, high enough to discourage four-legged scavengers. Tomorrow will bring the work of proper preservation, smoking, jerking, pemmican making, but for now, simply securing the bounty is enough. As twilight approaches, Harris sets you a new navigational challenge. Find north, he instructs, without using the sun or stars. You consider the problem, recalling his earlier lessons. Without celestial guidance, you need to rely on natural features. You study the surrounding trees, looking for moss growth patterns, but they're inconsistent, as Harris warned. The mountain ridges offer some clues, but not definitive ones. Finally, you spot a promising sign, an old lightning-struck pine with more branches on one side than the other. That way, you declare, pointing. South is that direction, so north is opposite. Harris nods approvingly. Good eye. How'd you figure it? The tree, you explain. More branches on the south side where it gets more sun, so that's south and north is opposite. Good observation, he acknowledges. Now, what else confirms it? You scan the landscape again, spotting additional clues now that you have a tentative orientation, the direction of the river flow, the position of certain peaks relative to the valley, the slightly greater snow accumulation on one side of rock outcroppings. Multiple signs, you say, with growing confidence, all pointing to the same direction. That's the way, Harris confirms. Never trust just one sign. Nature can fool you, but when 3 or 4 signs agree, you're probably right. He continues testing your navigation skills as you prepare the evening meal, quizzing you about route finding in various scenarios, in fog, in snowstorms, in featureless terrain. Each question forces you to apply principles rather than memorize facts, developing the adaptable thinking essential for wilderness survival. After supper, with darkness fully descended, Harris introduces a new navigational tool, the night sky. You've noticed him studying the stars before, but now he begins formal instruction, pointing out key constellations and their uses for orientation. North Star's your best friend at night, he explains, indicating the steadfast light that had guided travelers for millennia. Find the Big Dipper, follow the pointer stars, and there it is, always showing north. The lesson continues with other celestial landmarks, Cassiopeia, the Pleiades, Orion, each with its place in the seasonal progression of the night sky. Like indigenous peoples before them, mountain men had developed a sophisticated understanding of astronomy, not as an academic pursuit, but as a practical survival tool. Stars don't just show direction, Harris notes. They show seasons too. When Orion stands high at midnight, winter's at its depth. When he's visible in early evening, fall's turning to winter. This natural calendar, based on celestial observations rather than printed almanacs, governed the mountain man's yearly cycle. It told when to expect certain weather patterns, when animals would migrate, when plants would be available for harvest. For men living in harmony with natural rhythms, such knowledge was essential. As the lesson concludes, you realize how much your perception has changed in these months with Harris. What began as a bewildering wilderness has become increasingly legible, a landscape filled with signs and patterns for those who know how to read them. You're still a novice compared to Harris, but the foundation is there, growing stronger with each day's experience. Tomorrow we'll set more trap lines, Harris announces as you bank the fire for the night. Different direction, up the north fork of the creek, more chance of running into trouble there. It's closer to Blackfoot territory. The mention of the Blackfoot sends a chill through you. Unlike the relatively friendly Crow, the Blackfoot were implacably hostile to trappers whom they viewed as trespassers and resource thieves. Stories of their treatment of captured mountain men were the stuff of frontier nightmares. Should we avoid that area, you ask? Harris shakes his head. Best beaver grounds in the valley. Risk worth taking if we're careful. Besides, need to know all approaches to our camp, including the dangerous ones. This was another aspect of mountain wisdom, calculated risk-taking. Avoiding all danger was impossible and often counterproductive. Better to understand and manage risks than to pretend they didn't exist or could be completely avoided. Get some sleep, Harris advises, settling into his own bedroll. Tomorrow's a long day. You lie awake for a time, processing the day's lessons. Navigation, hunting, predator awareness, each skill building on the others, creating a web of knowledge that might mean the difference between life and death in this unforgiving environment. The learning curve remained steep, but you were climbing it, one hard-earned lesson at a time. Outside, an owl calls, 3 soft hoots that echo across the valley. Somewhere more distant, a wolf answers with a lonely howl. These night sounds, once alien and threatening, have become almost comforting in their familiarity. The wilderness isn't welcoming, exactly, but it's becoming comprehensible, its dangers balanced by its austere beauty, and the deep satisfaction of meeting its challenges. Sleep claims you eventually, bringing dreams of mountain trails and star-filled skies, of elk herds and silent bears, of finding your way through landscapes both threatening and magnificent. In the morning, you'll face new challenges, learn new skills, perhaps encounter new dangers. But for now, wrapped in buffalo robe in your snug cabin, you rest. A mountain man in training, increasingly at home in a world few Easterners could imagine, let alone survive. The wilderness is changing you, stripping away civilization's veneer to reveal something more elemental underneath. Not quite the savage of dime novels, but certainly not the person who first ventured west seeking fortune and adventure. Something in between, tougher, more patient, more attuned to the natural world and your place within it. Harris understands this transformation. He's guided others through it before, watched city softness give way to frontier hardiness. Some men couldn't make the change and returned east, broken by the mountain's harsh demands. Others, like you, adapted and thrived, finding in the wilderness a strange new home that challenged and rewarded in equal measure. Tomorrow's journey will test your growing skills, push you further along the path from greenhorn to mountain man. For now, the owl calls again, the fire crackles low, and sleep deepens, preparing body and mind for whatever the mountains might bring with the dawn's light. Weeks pass, bleeding into months. The rhythm of your days changes with the deepening winter. What began as autumn's mild chill has transformed into the iron grip of mountain cold. Temperatures that freeze breath into ice crystals and turn exposed skin white with frostbite in minutes. The calendar you once lived by, with its neat divisions of hours, days, weeks, has dissolved, replaced by nature's more elemental timekeeper. You mark days not by dates, but by the sun's brief arcs across the southern sky, by the phases of the moon, by the changing positions of constellations in the night. December now, or close to it, Harris remarks one morning as you both emerge from the cabin into knife-edge cold. The snow squeaks beneath your moccasins, so dry and frozen that it sounds almost like walking on glass. Shortest days coming. After that, light starts returning bit by bit. Winter in the high country isn't a season of leisure, despite the popular image of trappers idling away the months until spring. Every day brings essential tasks, gathering firewood, checking trap lines close to camp, maintaining equipment, hunting when game presents itself. Survival requires constant attention, a steady rhythm of necessary work. Wood pile's getting low, you observe, eyeing the stack of split logs beside the cabin. Keeping adequate firewood was a daily concern. In temperatures that routinely dropped to 30 below zero, running out meant death. Take the hand sleds up to the deadfall, Harris suggests, referring to a stand of lightning-killed pine you'd discovered on a nearby ridge. Good dry wood there, burns hot. The work is grueling in the deep snow, but your body has adapted to such labor. Muscles that once screamed in protest now perform steadily, efficiently. You've lost the softness of civilization, replaced by the wiry strength of a mountain man. Not bulky or imposing, but durable, capable of sustained effort in harsh conditions. Returning with the loaded sleds, you spot tracks crossing your path, the distinctive rounded prints of mountain lion. Harris examines them with professional interest when you point them out. Big Tom, he assesses, hunting the same deer we are, been through here this morning. There's no fear in his voice, just matter-of-fact acknowledgement of another predator sharing the valley. Winter created a certain equality among hunters. Human and animal alike all struggled against the same implacable cold, the same scarcity of food. Will it come near the cabin, you ask, remembering stories of starving predators growing bold enough to attack humans? Harris shrugs. Might. Cats are curious, but they're cautious too, especially around fire and human scent. He stands, brushing snow from his knees. Just keep your eyes open and make noise when you're out alone. Most trouble with predators comes when you surprise them. Back at the cabin, you spend the afternoon splitting and stacking the new wood, then repairing snowshoes that have begun to show wear. The quiet, repetitive tasks have become almost meditative, a time when hands work independently while mind wanders. You find yourself thinking of your life before the mountains, comparing that existence to your present reality. The contrasts are stark. Formerly, comfort was assumed, danger rare. Now comfort is fleeting, danger ever-present. Yet there's a strange satisfaction in this reversal, a depth to existence that was lacking in civilization's predictable safety. Each day survived feels earned rather than merely passed through. Evening brings another mountain winter ritual, the gathering of neighbours. 3 trappers from a camp 2 valleys over arrive as dusk approaches, their approach heralded by the jingling of steel traps and the soft hiss of snowshoes on powder. "Thought we'd find you boys frozen solid," calls the leader, a grizzled veteran named Fitzgerald, whom you've met at previous gatherings. "Winter's coming hard and early this year." Such visits were vital to mountain society, preventing the isolation that could drive men to madness during the long, dark months. News would be exchanged, stories told, perhaps small trades made, all reinforcing the human connections that helped trappers endure the wilderness. Harris welcomes them with customary hospitality, coffee laced with precious sugar, spaces near the fire, fresh venison from a deer shot 2 days prior. The cabin grows warm with bodies and conversation, smoke from pipes adding a fragrant haze to the firelit interior. Talk turns to practical matters first. Weather patterns, game movements, signs of Indian activity. Mountain men might seem like romantic individualists in Eastern newspapers, but their survival depended on shared knowledge and mutual support. Blackfoot crossed the North Divide last week, Fitzgerald reports soberly. War party looked like 12, maybe 15 warriors headed east toward Crow territory. Harris absorbs this news with a frown. Unusual for winter. Must be some blood debt they're settling. Or they're desperate, suggests one of Fitzgerald's companions, a younger trapper called Frlrontier for his Quebecois origins. Game scarce on the northern slopes this year. Might be hungry enough to risk winter raiding. The conversation continues in this vein, a detailed exchange of intelligence that would mean little to outsiders, but represented vital security information to men living on the frontier's edge. You listen attentively, adding your own observations when relevant.
This closed society of wilderness experts.
As night deepens and bellies fill with food, the talk shifts from practical concerns to storytelling. The mountain man's entertainment, education, and oral history combined. Tales of remarkable survival, narrow escapes, encounters with strange phenomena, all delivered in the understated style that was the hallmark of frontier narrative. Fitzgerald, warming to his role as the evening's principal storyteller, recounts a tale from his early days in the mountains. Winter of 25, over on the Yellowstone, me and old Pierre Leclade got caught in a blizzard that'd freeze the hair off a buffalo. No shelter except what we could make, no food except what little pemmican we had left. The cabin grows quiet as he speaks, each man drawn into the narrative, not through dramatic delivery or exaggerated details, but through the authentic voice of lived experience. 3 days that storm howled, snow so thick you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Built a snow cave, just big enough for 2 men and a small fire. took turns staying awake to keep that flame alive. Let it die, we'd have died with it. He describes their gradual weakening as supplies dwindled, the growing likelihood that neither would survive to see clear weather. Fourth morning, Pierre doesn't wake up, just slipped away in his sleep, peaceful like, too cold, too hungry, too tired to go on. The matter-of-fact description of his companion's death carries more emotional weight than any dramatic rendering could achieve. This was the mountain reality. Men died, often alone, or witnessed only by equally helpless companions. No ceremony, no marked graves, just the wilderness reclaiming its own. Had to keep moving after that, Fitzgerald continues. Knew if I stayed put, I'd follow Pierre quick enough. Started walking, no real idea which direction except downhill, figuring any valley might have game or shelter. His salvation came in the form of a hot spring. One of the geothermal features scattered throughout the greater Yellowstone region. The warmth kept a small area free of snow, attracting game and offering the barest margin of survival until the storm broke. Lived 6 days by that spring, eating whatever came to drink and keeping warm in the steam. Strangest thing, spring had minerals in it. Turned my skin and hair red as a fox. Crow hunting party found me eventually. Thought I was some kind of spirit with my red skin and half-starved look. Treated me gentle because of it. Nursed me back instead of taking my hair. The story concludes not with triumph but with humble acknowledgement of the fine margins between survival and death. Wasn't skill saved me, was luck, plain and simple. Mountains don't care how good a trapper you are when they decide to test you. Other stories follow. Harris contributes an account of navigating through dense fog using only the sound of distant waterfalls as guidance. Frenchie describes encountering a grizzly bear that ignored him completely, focused instead on gorging on berries before hibernation. You listen, absorbing not just the entertainment value, but the embedded lessons. Each tale contained practical wisdom, techniques that worked, mistakes to avoid, signs to watch for. This was the mountain man's true education, passed from veteran to greenhorn through narratives that engaged both emotion and intellect. Eventually, as the fire burns lower and eyelids grow heavy, the visitors prepare to depart. Night travel was dangerous, but sometimes necessary. With clear skies and a nearly full moon, the risk was acceptable for experienced men. Appreciate the company, Harris says as they don snowshoes at the cabin door. Needed some new voices besides this youngster's. Fitzgerald chuckles. He's coming along though, got the look now, not so green anymore. He studies you appraisingly, might make a proper mountain man by spring. The compliment, casual as it is, warms you more effectively than the fire. Acceptance by these veterans represented a transition from tolerated novice to recognized, if junior, member of their exclusive brotherhood. After the visitors depart, you and Harris prepare for sleep. The cabin has cooled with the doors opening, and you build up the fire to last through the night. Outside, the temperature continues its relentless drop. Winter in the high country was beautiful but merciless. The stars brilliant in the thin air, the snow transformed into diamond dust in the moonlight, and beneath this beauty, cold that could kill within hours. "Good men," Harris comments as he settles into his bedroll. Fitzgerald especially, one of the few from the old days still breathing. "How long has he been in the mountains, you ask?" "Since 16 or thereabouts, was with Ashley's first expedition up the Missouri. Survived the Arikara attack that killed a dozen others." Harris tamps out his pipe thoughtfully. "Mountains have tried to kill him 100 different ways. So far, he's outsmarted them." The casual reference to such longevity gives you pause. In the trapping profession, a man who survived 10 years was considered fortunate. Many didn't last their first winter. What's the secret, you wonder aloud, to lasting so long out here? Harris considers the question seriously. "Luck plays its part," he acknowledges. "Being in the wrong place at the wrong time can kill even the most skilled. But beyond luck," he pauses, organizing his thoughts. "3 things, I'd say. Knowledge, gained through experience and listening to those who have gone before. Adaptability, rigid men break when the mountains bend them. And community, lone wolves die alone when trouble finds them." It's one of the longest philosophical discourses you've heard from him, revealing the depth of thought beneath his practical exterior. Mountain men were often portrayed as unthinking brutes in Eastern newspapers, but the reality was far different. Survival in this environment required not just physical toughness, but intellectual flexibility and emotional resilience. "Get some sleep," Harris advises, ending the conversation in his typical abrupt manner. "Tomorrow we check the north traps. Long day ahead. Sleep comes easily despite the cold that seeps through even the well-constructed cabin walls. Your body has adapted to these conditions, developing a remarkable ability to generate heat through the night. The buffalo robes and wool blankets that seemed inadequate months ago now create a cocoon of sufficient warmth." Morning arrives with new snow, 6 fresh inches, transforming the landscape once again. After a breakfast of venison, hardtack, and coffee, you both prepare for the day's expedition to the distant trap line. "Take extra gear," Harris advises. "Weather feels changeable. Might need to shelter if it turns." This precaution, packing for potential emergency, had become second nature. In the mountains, conditions could shift from clear to life-threatening within hours. The prepared survived, the complacent perished. The journey to the North Traps takes you through the most beautiful terrain you've yet experienced. Pristine meadows where snow lies unmarked except for occasional wildlife tracks. Forests where laden branches create natural archways, ridges offering spectacular views of snow-covered peaks marching to the horizon. "Never gets old," Harris comments, noticing your appreciation of the scenery. "Been looking at these mountains 30 years, still find new beauty every day." It's a rare poetic sentiment from a man usually focused on practical concerns. Winter in the high country affected men differently. Some grew depressed and restless in the confinement, while others found a deeper connection to the landscape in its stark elemental power. The trap line yields modest success. 3 beaver and a marten. their fur prime with winter thickness. Harris examines each pelt with expert assessment. Good colour on this one, he notes of a particularly dark beaver. Fetch top price come rendezvous. London buyers pay extra for the dark ones. Fashion changes, but dark furs always in demand. Such considerations might seem distant in this remote wilderness, but the connection was real. The mountain trapper was part of a global economic system, his labour transformed into luxury goods for wealthy Europeans and Easterners he would never meet. The irony wasn't lost on most mountain men, that they, living with minimal possessions in nature's harshest environment, supported the excesses of urban wealth through their dangerous work. The return journey brings the weather change Harris predicted, not a blizzard but steady snow that reduces visibility and covers your outbound tracks. You navigate by landmark and compass sense, the lessons of previous months now applied in genuine conditions. Back at the cabin by mid-afternoon, you process the day's take, skinning, fleshing, stretching the pelts on willow hoops. The work is precise, requiring full attention despite cold, numbed fingers. A poorly prepared hide meant wasted effort and lost value. Unacceptable in the mountain economy where each pelt represented days of dangerous labour. Evening brings another ritual, equipment maintenance by firelight. Harris demonstrates the proper care of steel traps, showing how to keep them functioning in sub-zero temperatures. Oil freezes, he explains, working a trap's mechanism with practiced hands. Use rendered fat instead, stays soft in the cold. Such specialized knowledge, modified techniques for extreme conditions, separated successful mountain men from those who failed to adapt. Standard practices that worked in milder climates often proved useless or actively dangerous in the high country winter. As the evening deepens toward night, Harris surprises you by producing a small cloth-wrapped package from his personal stores. Inside is a carefully preserved treasure, dried apples, a luxury almost beyond imagining in the winter wilderness. Christmas, he explains briefly, or close enough. Lost track of the exact date, but should be around now. The simple celebration, shared dried fruit and an extra ration of coffee, touches you unexpectedly. In this moment of small comfort, you realize how far you've come from the measured abundance of civilization. What once would have seemed pitiful now represents genuine luxury. A moment of pleasure carved from an existence defined largely by necessity. To surviving winter, Harris offers, raising his tin cup in a rare toast. To surviving winter, you echo, savouring the sweet tart flavour of fruit that connects you, however tenuously, to orchards and summer and a world beyond endless snow. Later, as you bank the fire for the night, Harris speaks of spring, not with impatience, but with the calm acceptance of nature's cycles that characterizes the mountain man's worldview. Come March, we'll start seeing signs. Longer days first, then new bird calls, snow crust that bears weight in morning but not afternoon. He describes the progression with the precision of long observation. By April, beaver will be moving again. That's when the good trapping returns. The mental calendar stretches before you, not days marked on paper, but natural indicators of seasonal change. This was how humans had measured time for millennia before clocks and calendars imposed artificial regularity on the organic flow of the natural world. Sleep approaches as the fire settles to coals, casting a dim red glow through the cabin's interior. Outside, the snow continues falling, insulating the cabin in deepening silence. The wilderness in winter had its own particular sound, not true silence, but a hushed quality that seemed to absorb noise rather than transmit it. Harris is already breathing the deep rhythm of sleep, his body's clock aligned with darkness and light rather than arbitrary hours. Your own consciousness begins to drift, thoughts becoming less linear, more dreamlike. In this half-waking state, you reflect on the journey that brought you here, not just the physical travel from east to west, but the internal transformation from civilized tenderfoot to emerging mountain man. The change wasn't complete. You still had much to learn, skills to perfect, knowledge to absorb. But the foundation was laid, the direction established. The mountains had tested you and so far found you adequate to their challenges. There would be harder tests ahead, spring flooding, potential encounters with hostile tribes, the myriad dangers that made the trapper's life so precarious. But you face these prospects now not with fear, but with growing confidence, the quiet assurance that comes from survived hardship. Outside, an owl calls, 3 soft notes that seem to emphasize rather than break the winter silence. Somewhere distant, perhaps on the next ridge, a wolf answers. These night sounds, once alien and frightening, have become a familiar lullaby, the natural chorus of the wilderness night. Your mind continues its gentle drift towards sleep, the boundary between consciousness and dreams growing less distinct. Images flow behind your closed eyelids. Sunlight on fresh snow, the graceful arc of a hunting hawk. Harris demonstrating some fine point of wilderness craft. The glowing eyes of the mountain lion reflected in firelight. This is how the mountain man sleeps, not in absolute security, but in harmony with a world both beautiful and dangerous. The wilderness is not conquered. No human could claim such mastery, but perhaps a truce has been established, a mutual respect between the mountains and those hardy enough to dwell among them. As sleep claims you completely, your last awareness is of warmth beneath buffalo robes, the faint glow of banked coals, and the steady sound of falling snow, a mountain lullaby as old as time itself. Unlike your modern bed with its manufactured comfort, this wilderness sleep has been truly earned through labor, through learning, through respect for the unforgiving land that both threatens and sustains. Perhaps that's why it feels so profound, so deeply satisfying as consciousness fades into dream. The mountain winter continues outside, indifferent to human concerns, beautiful in its stark power, but within the shelter built by human hands, guided by knowledge passed through generations of mountain men, you rest secure, a small victory of adaptation and endurance in a land where such victories are never permanent, always to be earned anew with each rising sun. Sleep well in your warm modern bed, far from the frozen wilderness that tested men like Harris. Their world has vanished now, transformed by time and progress, but something of their spirit remains in the wild places they explored, in the trails they blazed, in the stories they left behind. Dream of mountain valleys and star-filled skies, of skills hard won and challenges overcome, and perhaps in those dreams find something of the mountain man's wisdom, the patience to endure, the knowledge to adapt, the courage to face each day's demands with quiet determination. These qualities served the frontiersmen well in their wilderness struggles. They serve us still in our different but no less demanding modern world. The wilderness may have receded, but the need for resilience remains, connecting us across time to those remarkable men who made their homes in the unforgiving embrace